Every confession begins the same way, with a secret, a regret, or a truth someone wishes they could take back. Tonight, you'll hear one of them. This is Confessions After Midnight. My wife died on a Thursday. The key arrived on Friday. Not by mail, not through a lawyer, not in her will. Someone slid it beneath my apartment door at exactly 2:11 in the morning. I know the time because the sound woke me up. Metal scraping against wood, a small sound, an insignificant sound, the kind of sound that shouldn't change your life. I opened the door expecting nothing. Instead, I found a brass key, old, worn, attached to a tag. 3 words, written in my wife's handwriting. Don't open it. That should have been enough. It should have ended there. Normal people would have listened. Normal people would have thrown it away. Normal people wouldn't spend the next 6 months destroying their own lives trying to learn the truth. But grief doesn't create normal decisions. It creates obsessions. And that key became mine. My wife, Claire, died unexpectedly. A brain aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye, no final conversation. One moment we were arguing about what movie to watch. The next moment she collapsed in our kitchen. 36 years old. Gone. Just gone. For weeks I lived like a ghost. Work, sleep, repeat. Nothing felt real anymore. Then the key appeared, and suddenly grief had direction, a mission, a mystery, a purpose. Because Claire wasn't the type to play games. If she left a key, it mattered. If she warned me not to open something, it mattered even more. The question wasn't whether she'd left me a secret. The question was why, and why she never wanted me to find it. The key belonged to a storage facility, 30 minutes outside the city, Unit 417. The manager didn't ask questions. He simply verified my identity and handed me access, as if he'd been expecting me. That should have scared me. Instead, it made me curious. Curiosity can be more dangerous than fear. I opened the unit and immediately wished I hadn't, because it wasn't full of boxes. It was full of a life: photographs, furniture, clothes, school projects, birthday cards, family albums, children's toys. Someone lived here, not physically, emotionally. Every object told a story. Every shelf contained memories. Every corner felt occupied. And sitting in the center of the room was a framed photograph. A woman, a little girl, and Claire, my wife, smiling beside them. Like a family. Not a friend, not an acquaintance. Family. I stared at that picture for a long time, because the little girl couldn't have been older than 8, and she was holding Claire's hand, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Then, I noticed something, written on the frame, in black marker. Summer 2018. 3 years into our marriage, I spent the next week cataloging everything, trying to understand, trying to find context, trying to find a rational explanation. Instead, I found something worse: consistency. There were photos spanning years, Christmases, birthdays, vacations, school events, hospital visits, graduations. Claire was present in all of them, not occasionally, constantly. She wasn't visiting these people. She was part of their lives, deeply, intimately, repeatedly. And every discovery raised the same question: who were they? And why had my wife hidden them from me? Then, I found a drawing, a child's drawing, crayons, stick figures, a house, a dog, a son, and 3 people. One figure was labeled Mommy, the second, Emma, the third, Claire, not Aunt Claire, not Miss Claire, just Claire, like she belonged there, like she always had. And for the first time, an ugly thought entered my mind, a thought I hated, a thought I couldn't stop thinking. What if Claire had another family? For 3 days, I stared at the photograph. The woman, the child, Claire, my wife, my secretive, impossible wife. Every time I looked at the picture, I noticed something new: a familiarity, a comfort, a closeness that couldn't be faked. Claire wasn't posing, she belonged there, and that terrified me. Because if she belonged there, where exactly had I belonged? The first clue came from a school certificate I found inside one of the storage boxes. The child's name was Emma Carter, age 10, honor roll, elementary school, local address. I drove there the next morning. Part of me hoped I'd find answers. Part of me hoped I'd find nothing, because every answer so far had only created bigger questions. The address led to a small yellow house. Quiet neighborhood, white fence, flower boxes beneath the windows. Normal. Painfully normal. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to build the courage, trying to prepare for whatever waited behind that door. Eventually I knocked. The person who answered wasn't the woman from the photograph. It was the child, Emma, older now, maybe 11, maybe 12. Hard to tell. She looked at me for 2 seconds, then her eyes widened. Before I said a single word, she whispered, "You're finally here." My stomach dropped. "What?" The little girl smiled sadly, a smile far too old for her age. Then she said 6 words that would haunt me for months. "Claire said you'd come someday." Emma's mother arrived moments later. The woman from the photograph, Sarah. The second she saw me standing there, her expression changed. Not surprise, recognition, as if she'd been expecting this moment for years. Without asking questions, she invited me inside. That alone terrified me, because innocent people ask questions. People carrying secrets already know the answers. The house felt strangely familiar, not because I'd been there, because Claire had. Every room contained traces of her, books she'd recommended, coffee mugs she'd gifted, photographs she'd taken, plants she'd bought. My wife was everywhere. Sarah eventually disappeared into another room. When she returned, she carried a sealed envelope, yellowed, old, addressed to me, in Claire's handwriting. My pulse quickened. "She told me to give you this if you ever found us." I stared at the envelope. "How long have you had this?" Sarah looked down. 7 years. 7 years. Claire had planned for this possibility 7 years ago, long before her death, long before the key, long before everything. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, only 1 page. The first sentence destroyed every theory I'd built. "If you're reading this, then you found Sarah and Emma." I kept reading. "Before you hate me, please understand one thing." A pause. "They are not my family." The room went silent. "They're yours." I read the sentence again, then again, then again. My brain refused to process it. "They're yours. No, impossible." I looked at Sarah, then Emma, then back at the letter. No, I would have known, wouldn't I? I asked the question immediately, the only question that mattered. "What does that mean?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and then she said something even worse. "Emma is your daughter." Everything stopped. The room, the sound, my heartbeat, time itself. My daughter. No, I had never cheated on Claire. Never. Not once. So how could I possibly have another child? Sarah answered before I could ask. "Do you remember New Year's Eve 12 years ago?" And suddenly, a memory surfaced, and one I'd forgotten, one I'd buried, one I'd never considered important. Until now, everything I'd believed collapsed. For weeks I thought Claire had betrayed me. Now I was learning she may have spent years protecting me, Sarah explained. 6 years earlier, Claire discovered Emma accidentally. Not through an affair, not through suspicion, through a medical emergency. Emma needed a blood relative for testing. One thing led to another. DNA was run, records surfaced, and eventually Claire learned the truth. My truth. A daughter I never knew existed, a relationship erased by memory loss, a child growing up without a father. Sarah assumed Claire would tell me immediately. She didn't. Instead, she spent months investigating, trying to understand, trying to verify, trying to decide. Then, she discovered something terrifying. My medical records, the concussion, the memory damage, the missing years. And according to Sarah, Claire became convinced of something that controlled the rest of her life. She believed telling me would destroy me. Before I left, Sarah handed me 3 notebooks, Claire's journals, years of entries, thousands of pages, private thoughts, private fears, private decisions. The first journal contained a sentence I'll never forget. "I don't know whether telling him the truth would heal him or break him." I read that line over and over, because suddenly the villain of the story was disappearing, and something much worse was taking its place. A woman trapped inside an impossible decision. Tell her husband he has a daughter he doesn't remember, or protect him from a truth that could destroy his sense of self. Neither option was clean. Neither option was kind. And as I turned the next page, I realized Claire had been carrying this burden completely alone, for years, without telling anyone, not even me. And buried deep inside those journals was another secret, one that would trigger the mid-story detonation, one that would make the existence of Emma seem small by comparison, because Claire wasn't hiding one family. She was hiding a crime. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment with Claire's journals spread across the kitchen table, 3 notebooks, 7 years of secrets, 7 years of decisions she made alone, 7 years of carrying a burden that should have belonged to both of us. At first, the entries focused on Emma, the DNA results, the meetings with Sarah, the guilt, the fear, the impossible question. Should she tell me, or should she protect me? The journals didn't contain answers, only suffering. Then everything changed. Near the end of the second notebook, Claire's writing became different, messier, more anxious, more rushed. Entire pages were filled with crossed-out sentences. Paragraphs ended abruptly. Dates disappeared. Thoughts became fragmented, like someone was becoming afraid. One entry stood out immediately. Someone knows. That was all. Just 2 words, underlined 3 times. The next page was worse. I thought Emma was the secret. I was wrong. My stomach tightened. Because until that moment, I believed Emma was the mystery, the hidden daughter, the second life, the thing Claire had been protecting. Apparently she wasn't. Apparently something much bigger was hiding beneath the surface, and Claire had discovered it. The clue came from a photograph taped inside the journal, a photo I'd never seen before. Claire stood beside a man outside a courthouse. Both looked serious. Neither was smiling. I didn't recognize him at first. Then I noticed something strange. The man wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at Claire, not casually, not professionally, fearfully, like she knew something, like he knew she knew something. The back of the photo contained a handwritten note. If anything happens to me, start with Victor. Victor, no last name, no explanation, nothing, just Victor. I immediately searched through the remaining journals. The name appeared dozens of times, always in short entries, always vague, always nervous. Saw Victor again. He knows where I live. Victor asks questions. Victor keeps watching. And then one entry made my blood run cold. I think Victor knows about Emma. 3 days later, I found Victor, retired attorney, 71 years old, living alone outside the city. I expected denial, confusion, maybe hostility. Instead, the moment I introduced myself, he closed his eyes, like a man finally meeting the consequence he'd been expecting for years. You look exactly like her, Claire. He invited me inside, and before I could ask a single question, he said something that changed everything. Your wife was trying to save you, not herself, not Emma. Me. That answer made no sense. Save me from what? Victor looked exhausted. Then he opened an old filing cabinet, removed a thick folder, and placed it on the table. Because one day she learned what really happened to you. Inside the folder were court records, medical reports, insurance documents, witness statements, all connected to my accident 12 years earlier. The accident that supposedly caused my memory loss. The accident that erased Sarah, erased Emma, erased an entire chapter of my life. I already knew that story. Or at least, I thought I did. Then, I read the first witness statement and realized I'd been wrong for 12 years. The crash wasn't an accident. I stared at the page, read it again, then again. The words never changed. According to the witness, the other vehicle intentionally crossed into my lane. Intentionally. Not distracted, not careless, not drunk. Intentional. The crash had been deliberate. Someone tried to kill me, and succeeded only halfway, because instead of dying, I lost my memory. Victor watched me carefully, then delivered the next blow. The driver was never identified. The room became silent, because suddenly, everything connected. The missing memories, the hidden daughter, the years of confusion, Claire's fear, Victor. Someone had taken my life from me, and Claire had spent years trying to find out who. Victor handed me another document, a private investigator's report commissioned by Claire 4 years before her death. She'd been investigating my accident in secret, not because she distrusted me, because she distrusted the official story. And eventually, she found something so disturbing she never put it in writing, only hints, fragments, references. The investigator believed the crash wasn't random. It wasn't road rage. It wasn't mistaken identity. It wasn't chance. The person driving that car knew me, personally, very personally. The report contained a final sentence highlighted in yellow, a sentence that made my stomach drop. Primary suspect had a clear motive to erase Mr. Dawson from Emma Carter's life. I froze. Erase me from Emma's life. Only someone connected to Emma would benefit from that. Only someone close to Sarah, only someone who viewed me as a threat. And suddenly, a terrible possibility entered my mind. A possibility so ugly I hated myself for considering it. What if Sarah hadn't been a victim? What if she'd been part of it? That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered immediately. Silence. Then breathing, slow, calm. Someone was listening, waiting. Finally a voice spoke. An older woman's voice, weak, tired, and terrified. "You found the journals, My heart stopped. Because I recognized the voice, not from real life, from one of Claire's recordings. The voice belonged to Claire's mother. A woman everyone believed had dementia. A woman living in assisted care. A woman supposedly incapable of remembering anything. Yet somehow she knew exactly what I was doing. And before I could ask how, she whispered 5 words. The wrong person survived. Then the call ended, and for the first time, I began wondering if the target of that crash had never been me at all. The next morning, I drove 3 hours to the assisted living facility where Claire's mother lived. The entire drive, one sentence replayed in my head. The wrong person survived. I had spent 12 years believing I was the victim of a random tragedy. Then, I learned the crash was intentional. Now, someone was suggesting I hadn't even been the target. Nothing made sense anymore. When I arrived, a nurse greeted me with a sympathetic smile. "She's having a good day." Good day. The phrase sounded ridiculous. How many good days can a woman have after burying her daughter? I entered her room. Margaret sat beside a window, small, fragile, gray-haired. For a moment she looked exactly like everyone had described. Confused, lost, disconnected. Then she saw me, and her eyes sharpened instantly. "You're late." I froze. No confusion, no dementia, no hesitation, just certainty. "I've been waiting for years." Margaret didn't waste time. She knew why I was there. Apparently she'd known for years. She looked toward the door, waited until I closed it, then lowered her voice. "Claire figured it out." My pulse quickened. "Figured out what?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Who caused the crash?" The room became silent. For months I'd been chasing that answer, and now it sat 3 feet away. "Who was it?" She shook her head. "That's the wrong question." Then she leaned forward. "Ask why." According to Margaret, Claire became obsessed with the accident. Not immediately, not after marriage, not even after Emma appeared. It started when she requested my hospital records. One page bothered her, one detail, one contradiction. The doctors believed my memory loss was unusually severe, far beyond what the injury should have caused. At first, nobody questioned it. Then, Claire found something buried inside the reports. Medication, heavy medication, administered repeatedly during recovery, enough to worsen memory retention, enough to permanently damage recall, enough to erase entire sections of a life. Someone had wanted my memories gone, not temporarily, forever. Margaret opened her purse, removed a folded photograph, and handed it to me. The second I saw it, my stomach dropped, because I recognized everyone: Sarah, me, Emma, and another man standing beside them, smiling, holding Emma, like a father. I stared. "Who is he?" Margaret looked away, then answered. "His name was Daniel." The room felt smaller, because I already knew what came next, not the details, just the shape, the betrayal, the ugly truth, the thing nobody wanted to say aloud. Daniel had dated Sarah after the accident. after my memories vanished, after I disappeared from their lives, and over time, he became Emma's father in every way that mattered. School events, birthdays, hospital visits, homework, nightmares, Christmas mornings, everything. He raised her, while I unknowingly lived 50 miles away, completely unaware she existed. The realization hurt, but not because I hated Daniel, because I couldn't. Every story I'd heard described him as kind, patient, loving, the type of man every child deserves, the type of father Emma deserved, the type of father I never got the chance to become. Then, Margaret revealed the part nobody knew. Daniel wasn't just Emma's father, he was also Claire's investigator, the man helping her uncover the truth. The room spun. What? Margaret nodded. Claire hired him. Years earlier. Because Daniel used to work in insurance fraud investigations. And he was the one who discovered the accident wasn't accidental. He was the one who found the witness. He was the one who followed the paper trail. He was the one who identified the suspect. And according to Margaret, that discovery got him killed. I stared. Killed? Everyone told me Daniel died from a heart attack. Margaret shook her head. No. Silence. Then, he was poisoned. My hands went numb. Because suddenly the story changed again. This wasn't a buried secret. This wasn't family drama. This was a cover-up. And people were dying because of it. Margaret reached into her purse one final time, removed a folded piece of paper. Old, worn, handled dozens of times. Claire's handwriting. Just one sentence. One sentence she'd never put inside her journals. Never stored digitally. Never spoken aloud. Because she knew how dangerous it was. I unfolded it, read it, and felt the room disappear. Because written across the page was a single name. Not Sarah, not Daniel, not Victor. Mine. Mark Dawson. I couldn't breathe. What is this? Margaret started crying, the kind of crying that comes from carrying a secret too long. Then she whispered, Claire eventually realized the crash wasn't meant to erase you. Silence. It was meant to protect you. Every nerve in my body lit up. Nothing made sense. Protect me? From what? Margaret closed her eyes, then delivered the most terrifying sentence of the entire story. Because before the accident, you were the one investigating Emma. The room became silent. Not confused silence, horrified silence. Because suddenly I understood what Claire had been afraid of. Not the crash, not Emma, not Sarah. My memories, the missing years, the pieces of myself I no longer remembered. Because if Margaret was telling the truth, then before the accident I already knew Emma existed, which meant one thing. The life I thought had been stolen from me, might have been hidden by me, and somewhere inside those missing memories was the final answer. The answer Claire died trying to protect. I left the facility in a daze. For 2 hours I sat in my car without turning the engine on, just staring, thinking, trying to force reality back into something recognizable. It never happened, because one sentence kept replaying. Before the accident, you were the one investigating Emma. That was impossible, wasn't it? If I knew Emma existed, why didn't I tell Claire? Why didn't I tell Sarah? Why didn't I stay? Why didn't I fight? Unless the answers existed somewhere inside the missing years, and someone had worked very hard to keep them there. That evening I returned to the storage unit, Unit 417, the place where this nightmare began. I searched everything again, every box, every folder, every photograph, every journal. At 11:42 p.m., I found something I'd missed, a false bottom hidden inside an old filing cabinet. Inside was a single manila folder, labeled File, Mark Dawson. My hands started shaking because Claire hadn't hidden information from me. She'd hidden information about me. Inside were transcripts, emails, notes, photographs, recordings, all belonging to me, all created before the accident, and all proving one horrifying fact. Margaret had been right. I already knew about Emma, years before Claire did. The room spun. According to the documents, Sarah contacted me after discovering she was pregnant. I met Emma, held Emma, spent time with Emma. There were photographs proving it, photographs I couldn't remember taking, videos I couldn't remember recording, memories that belonged to someone else, someone who looked exactly like me. Then I found the email. The email that changed everything, sent 3 weeks before the crash, from me to Sarah. Subject: I think someone is following me. My stomach dropped. I opened it. Sarah, if anything happens to me, keep Emma away from him. No name, no explanation, just him. And suddenly, I understood why Claire never stopped investigating, because before I lost my memory, I knew I was in danger. The last item in the folder was a flash drive. One recording, 27 minutes long, labeled for mark only. I knew immediately. Claire, her final confession, the one she'd hidden behind the key, the storage unit, the journals, the years of secrets. I pressed play. At first there was silence, then Claire's voice, soft, tired, heartbroken. And immediately I started crying, because it was the first time I'd heard her voice since she died. Hi, sweetheart. The room disappeared. I'm sorry. A pause. If you're hearing this, then I'm gone. I closed my eyes. For a moment, she felt alive again. Then, she said the words that shattered everything. You've been chasing the wrong mystery. Claire explained everything. Years before I met her, I discovered something. Not about Sarah, not about Emma, about my own father. The man I spent my life admiring, trusting, loving. The man I'd believed was good. According to Claire, he wasn't. Not entirely. Years earlier, he had embezzled money from a charity. Millions. The investigation never reached court, never reached media, never reached police. Because witnesses disappeared, evidence disappeared, records disappeared, and eventually, the truth disappeared too. Except it didn't, because one person kept digging. Me. Before the accident, I found proof. Financial records, bank transfers, witness statements, enough evidence to expose him, enough evidence to destroy him, enough evidence to send him to prison. And apparently, he found out. The crash, the memory loss, the years of confusion, everything finally aligned, because the person behind the accident, the person behind the surveillance, the person behind Daniel's death, the person Claire feared, was my father. The room became silent. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My father, the man who taught me baseball, who attended my graduation, who cried at my wedding, who held Emma as a baby, the man I loved, and according to Claire, the man who destroyed my life. Not because he hated me, because he loved me. That was the sickest part. Claire explained that in his mind, he wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting the family, protecting our name, protecting our future, protecting me from what exposure would supposedly do. He justified everything, the crash, the lies, the cover-up, all of it. Because that's what people do when they've crossed too many lines. They stop seeing evil. They start seeing necessity. Then came the final truth. The one Claire never recovered from, the one that explained the storage unit, the key, the warning, everything. Years after the accident, my father confessed to her. Not publicly, not legally, privately. Because he was dying. And dying people sometimes mistake confession for redemption. Claire recorded everything, saved everything, documented everything. But she never exposed him. Because by then, he was already dying. And because she saw something I never would have. The damage was already done. Prison wouldn't give me back my memories, wouldn't give Emma back her childhood, wouldn't bring Daniel back, wouldn't heal Sarah, wouldn't fix anything. It would only create new victims. So Claire made a choice. She buried the truth, then spent the rest of her life wondering whether that decision made her compassionate or cowardly. The recording ended. I sat alone inside the storage unit for hours, until I noticed one final box, small, dust-covered, unopened, the last box. Inside were children's drawings, photographs, birthday cards, letters, memories. Not Claire's, not Sarah's, not Emma's, mine. The life I lost, the life nobody could return. And at the bottom was one drawing. A little girl, crayon house, crayon sun, crayon smile. Emma, age 4. Written beneath the picture, "Daddy, thank you for coming." I broke, completely, because that drawing proved something worse than betrayal, something worse than lies. I had loved her, and she had loved me. Before the accident, before everything disappeared. 6 months later, I visited the storage unit one final time. Most of the boxes were gone. The photographs had been moved, the journals archived, the secrets finally laid to rest. Only one thing remained. That drawing, Emma's drawing, taped to the far wall. I stood there for a long time, looking at the picture, looking at the words, looking at a version of myself I could never remember. Then, I noticed something. A note tucked behind it. One I'd somehow missed before. Claire's handwriting, just one sentence. The final sentence she ever left me. You weren't searching for Emma. A pause. You were searching for your way back to her. I sat there until sunset, alone, surrounded by ghosts, not the dead, the living. The daughter who grew up without me, the wife who carried impossible burdens, the man I used to be. And when I finally left, I left the drawing behind, still taped to the wall, still waiting, still asking the same question it had asked for 12 years, the question that hurt more than every secret combined. Daddy, when are you coming home? Some secrets die with the people who keep them. Others survive, waiting years for someone to uncover the truth. If tonight's confession stayed with you, let me know in the comments. What would you have done? Would you have made the same choice? Or would you have chosen differently? I read as many comments as I can, and some of the most powerful stories come from this community. And if you're new here, subscribe to Confessions After Midnight for more true-to-life confessions, hidden secrets, family betrayals, shocking revelations, and stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Because somewhere, right now, someone is carrying a secret they haven't told a soul. And one day, that secret may become a confession. This has been Confessions After Midnight, where every secret has a story, and every story leaves a scar. Good night, and be careful what you bury.